Welcome back. I bet you're exhausted. Come on in, my husband's voice greeted me as we approached our doorstep. But before I could step inside, my mother-in-law intercepted, blocking my path with a rigid stance. Jennifer, could you run a quick errand for us? It's just a small shopping trip. After all, you're the daughter-in-law. With a curt nod, she handed me a list, the door closing firmly behind her. I'm Jennifer, a 25-year-old housewife, married to David for 2 years now. Once upon a time, I had a long-term boyfriend. We met in middle school, and our romance endured through high school and college, a solid 5 years. I thought we were on track to marry once our careers settled. But then, as my sophomore year of college drew to a close, he vanished without a trace, leaving behind a solitary message. I'm sorry, we should break up. And just like that, he vanished from my life. I searched high and low, but his whereabouts remained a mystery, even to my closest friends. It was a crushing blow. If you're ending things, at least have the decency to tell me why. I pleaded silently, but he vanished into thin air after 5 solid years together. Acceptance seemed impossible, and moving on felt like an insurmountable task. I wished he had just ripped the bandage off brutally, rather than leaving me hanging in limbo. Throughout the remainder of my college years, I spiraled into a cycle of self-destruction. Week after week, I drowned my sorrows in parties, earning a reputation for offering indiscriminate hugs to every guy in sight. Yet by some stroke of luck, I never allowed things to escalate further. Perhaps it was his lingering influence that restrained me, preventing me from veering into darker territory. My longtime friends couldn't bear witnessing my downward spiral any longer. With the best intentions, they began to introduce me to eligible suitors, hoping a new romance might anchor me. Each introduction brought forth quiet, steady men, but I recoiled from their advances, paralyzed by the fear of abandonment. Still, I forced myself to honor my commitments to my friends, and then amidst the haze of doubt and fear, I encountered someone who ignited a glimmer of hope within me, David. Older and with a steadfast determination, he possessed a clarity of purpose that resonated deeply with me. I'm focused on building my career, and I seek a partner who will stand by me at home, he declared with unwavering certainty. His words resonated deeply within me, stirring memories of the dreams I once shared with my ex. Yes, marriage had always been a part of our plan. From the outset of our relationship, we both envisioned a future together. After graduating from college, I dedicated a year to gain valuable work experience, a period of growth that I found enriching and fulfilling. Yet, when the time came to fulfill my promise to David, I willingly set aside my career aspirations to embrace the role of homemaker. Our life together has unfolded with a remarkable ease. David has proven to be not only loving but also remarkably considerate. Drawing from the independence I cultivated during my time living alone, I seamlessly transitioned into managing our household, and on those occasions when illness or fatigue set in, David readily assumed responsibility for the chores without hesitation. While David's career may not be glamorous, his unwavering dedication to his work is admirable. Our life together may lack the extravagance of some, but I find profound contentment in the simplicity of our marriage. Approaching our second Christmas together, my mother-in-law's call sent a shiver down my spine. Come home for Christmas this year. We have relatives to visit, she commanded, her tone as stern as ever. Compared to my own laid-back mom, her assertiveness always left me on edge. Of course we'll be there, I replied, attempting to mask my apprehension. Last Christmas, we opted for a trip, bypassing the in-laws since it was our inaugural year of marriage. I recalled how David had briefed his parents on our plans, yet when the call came from his mother, it was left to me to handle. Did he struggle to assert himself with them? The looming invitation filled me with dread for the impending holiday. Despite not being intimately familiar with my husband's family dynamics, I reassured myself that it was only a 2-day affair, a manageable stint. David, your mom called. What's the plan? I asked, a touch of anxiety creeping into my voice. She wants us both to come home for Christmas. There are relatives to visit too, remember? Since we skipped last year, we thought it's only fair to spend this Christmas with them, he replied, a hint of uncertainty in his tone. With gifts in tow, we felt adequately prepared for the occasion. The drive to his parents' house was a relatively short hour and a half, yet the anticipation weighed heavily on me. It had been a while since our last visit, and I couldn't shake off the nerves. Just relax, it's Christmas, David reassured me casually as we stepped out of the car, his easygoing demeanor doing little to ease my apprehension. As we arrived, a familiar voice called out, and David hurried over to greet the source, Emma, his cousin. She wrapped her arm around him in a playful gesture, but David quickly shook her off, a hint of annoyance flickering across his features. Emma, a year older than David, had a tendency to tease him relentlessly, a dynamic that had persisted since childhood. The first time I encountered Emma, her casual familiarity with David caught me off guard. I initially suspected she harbored feelings for him, viewing me as a rival. However, I soon realized the opposite was true. Emma's teasing stemmed from their long-standing sibling-like relationship, a bond that remained unchanged even into adulthood. Despite David's exasperation with her antics, Emma extended warmth and friendliness towards me, dispelling any initial misgivings. "Jennifer, it's been ages. Let's catch up over plenty of drinks this Christmas. See you tomorrow. I've got some errands to run," Emma chirped before darting back into the house. "Great, just what we needed," David muttered, clearly annoyed by the unexpected encounter. As we stood outside, David grumbled about our luck in bumping into Emma so soon. With his parents' house in the opposite direction of where we needed to go for the relatives' gathering, he began to stride towards his family's residence, voicing his frustration. Despite the disruption, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief wash over me. Perhaps Emma's brief appearance was a blessing in disguise, a timely distraction that helped alleviate my nerves. With renewed determination, I followed David towards his parents' house, ready to embrace the festivities ahead. "We're back," my husband announced as he swung open the front door, only to be greeted by the hurried approach of my mother-in-law. "Welcome home. You both must be exhausted. Come on in," she ushered us inside. "Hello, mother-in-law," I greeted politely, attempting to follow my husband into the house, only to be halted in my tracks as she intercepted my path. "Jennifer, could you run a quick errand for us? It's just a small shopping trip." "Naturally, as the daughter-in-law, it falls to you," she declared, thrusting a list into my hands before abruptly shutting the door behind us. Surveying the extensive list she had given me, I couldn't help but feel overwhelmed. It was a laundry list of items ranging from everyday essentials like olive oil and vinegar to more extravagant fare like baguettes, drinks, fruits, and even luxury items such as steak and lobster. Clearly, this shopping trip was no small endeavor. I've only visited my in-laws a handful of times and I'm completely unfamiliar with the area. This is quite a hefty list, isn't it? How am I expected to manage carrying all of this on my own? And what about the expenses? It's utterly unreasonable to assume I'll foot the bill for everything. As my husband, who must have overheard the exchange, remains conspicuously absent, I can't help but feel a wave of frustration wash over me. "Hey David, aren't you going to help out?" I call out, standing bewildered outside, awaiting his assistance. Yet to my dismay, all I hear is laughter emanating from within the house. "Ah, I see how it is. I'm being disregarded," I mutter to myself, refusing to be relegated to the role of a mere housekeeper on Christmas. Frustrated by my mother-in-law's blatant demands and my husband's indifference, I make the decision to leave, driving back home in a fit of anger. Determined to salvage what's left of the holiday, I procure food and drinks for a relaxing Christmas at home. However, as I settle in with a beer, I'm startled by an unfamiliar sound emanating from my husband's belongings. Fuming with anger towards my mother-in-law, I stormed off, driving home with my husband's luggage stowed in the car. Among his belongings was his phone, which began incessantly ringing, prompting my curiosity. I had never felt the need to snoop through his phone before, but now, I couldn't resist the temptation to glance at the caller ID. It was a woman's name. As I stood frozen, the call ended and a message notification appeared. With the messages displayed on the screen, I read a series of short sentences that pierced through me. "David, when are you coming back from the in-laws? I'm feeling jealous being here without you. I've put off seeing you for Christmas, but make sure to come to me as soon as you return." My heart sank as the reality dawned on me. My husband was cheating. In that moment, any warmth I felt towards him turned to ice. While I had previously brushed off my mother-in-law's harassment as a minor nuisance due to our infrequent encounters, discovering my husband's infidelity was an entirely different story. There's no way I can continue living in this shame of a marriage. With a sense of urgency, I attempted to unlock his phone, and to my disbelief, the password was my own birthday. Using my own birthday to secure a phone he's using to communicate with his mistress. The audacity. Swiftly, I gathered evidence of his affair. There was no need for a private investigator. His phone held all the damning proof I required. The exchange of messages and the contents of his photo folders painted a damning picture of his infidelity. Now, faced with the reality of his betrayal, I contemplated my next move. In a moment of boldness, I seized his phone and composed a message to his mistress. My wife has gone back to her parents' house after a disagreement, so we have the opportunity to spend Christmas together. Come over, I typed, pretending to be him. Almost immediately, her reply came through. I swiftly responded with our address and awaited her arrival. She promised to be there within an hour, and true to her word, the doorbell rang just 30 minutes later. That was remarkably fast. As I swung open the door, I was met with the unexpected sight of my husband, father-in-law, and mother-in-law standing before me, their expressions betraying a sense of dejection. "Oh, we're back." My mother-in-law's voice carried a somber tone as she and my husband exchanged glances. "What happened to you two? Let us in for now," she continued, gesturing for us to step aside. With a sense of bewilderment, I ushered them into the room. But as they entered, a voice caught my attention, one that didn't belong to my father-in-law. Who could it be? Turning towards the entrance, my eyes fell upon Emma, standing beside none other than my grandmother-in-law, my mother-in-law's own matriarch. I was taken aback by the unexpected appearance of my grandmother-in-law. "What brings you here?" I began, but before I could finish, she interjected, ushering us all inside. "Come on, David, and you too, Jennifer," she said, her tone softened by an apology. "I'm sorry for ignoring you earlier, Jennifer. And David, I apologize for any oversight on my part." Upon closer observation, both my husband and mother-in-law appeared visibly unsettled in her presence. Grandmother-in-law's piercing gaze bore down on them, a testament to her intolerance for wrongdoing and bullying. Though she could be intimidating in her directness, there was an underlying warmth to her character that endeared her to me. I had always admired grandmother-in-law for her candidness and genuine care for those around her. It turned out that Emma had confronted my husband about our absence, noticing our car missing from the parking lot. He had been lounging at home, completely unaware of my departure to Emma's inquiry. Enraged, she had interrogated him, and in turn, he had shifted the blame onto my mother-in-law. Thus, the truth about the shocking incident came to light. Grandmother-in-law, having been informed of the situation, wasted no time in reprimanding them both. Even my father-in-law, who had been busy cleaning the neighborhood, was taken aback when he heard the story. Meanwhile, I had intentionally turned off my phone, rendering myself unreachable. Concerned for my whereabouts, they had hurried home to find me. As we discussed the unfolding events, the doorbell interrupted our conversation once more. Unsurprisingly, it was her standing on the other side. "Emma, could you please answer the door?" I called out, and in response, there was a sudden commotion followed by voices in dispute. As I observed, my husband's complexion turned pale, signaling the arrival of an unexpected guest. The tension in the room escalated, and I struggled to suppress a rising sense of amusement. The situation reached its climax as the woman my husband believed he had invited attempted to flee, only to be intercepted by Emma and ushered into the room. A collective gasp echoed through the room as everyone laid eyes on her. I too was taken aback, not just by her presence but by her attire, a frilly headpiece and a fluttering miniskirt resembling that of a maid's uniform. In that moment, the realization dawned on me. Was my husband involved with someone like her? The woman, under the impression that she had been invited by my husband, stood in shock, confronted by a room full of adults. "David, what's happening?" I demanded, my voice tinged with a mix of disbelief and frustration. David hesitated before reluctantly explaining, "Well, you see, this girl is, your mistress, right?" "What? How did you find out?" the mistress exclaimed, her face flushing with embarrassment as she glanced nervously between us. "Yeah, because I saw your phone. I gathered plenty of evidence from photos to messages. I know everything," I interjected, my tone firm and unwavering. At this revelation, the mistress let out a panicked cry, pleading for help from both David and my mother-in-law. The unexpected plea for assistance from my mother-in-law left me stunned, raising more questions than answers. What ensued was sheer chaos. Emma and I grilled my husband about the affair, while my father-in-law and grandmother-in-law sternly questioned my mother-in-law about her mistreatment of me. It was made abundantly clear to all three that their actions were utterly unacceptable, and my mother-in-law was especially condemned for condoning the affair. The most shocking revelation was how my husband came to know the maid. Strangely enough, it was my mother-in-law who played a pivotal role in their encounter. She had developed an interest in maid cafes but felt awkward attending alone. So she enlisted my husband as her companion. They bonded over their shared enjoyment of the performances and began frequenting the cafes together, eventually leading to the affair. What baffled me even more was my mother-in-law's apparent fondness for the mistress and her willingness to turn a blind eye to the affair. I couldn't understand why she would allow her son's infidelity to continue unchecked, especially given the distress it caused me. With the holiday season looming, my husband and I made the difficult decision to divorce before Christmas. It was a choice mirrored by my father-in-law and mother-in-law, who also opted to end their marriage during their time at our place, witnessing 2 divorces in one go. As the proceedings unfolded, the mistress trembled visibly, her demeanor reflecting a mixture of fear and uncertainty. Under Emma's watchful gaze and stern tone, she seemed to shrink with trepidation. Perhaps the notion of marriage had become a source of trauma for her. But that was no longer my concern. After reaching a settlement with my husband, the mistress, and even my mother-in-law, I reclaimed my freedom as a single woman once more. I secured a job and embraced the newfound sense of independence that came with it. Life was good, and I relished the opportunity to chart my own course forward. After the divorce, something unexpected occurred in my life. Emma and I had developed a close bond and become drinking buddies. Today, we plan to go bar hopping together once more. As I made my way to our meeting spot, I noticed someone standing beside Emma. Could that be Emma's boyfriend? Approaching them, the man turned around, and I was stunned. It was my ex-boyfriend, the one who had vanished without a trace. He seemed equally taken aback to see me. "Emma, I'm sorry, but I have to go," I stammered, feeling the surge of emotions welling up inside me. "What? Jennifer, why?" Emma protested, clearly confused by my sudden departure. Without hesitation, I began to run, my ex calling out after me, "Jennifer, wait, let's talk." But I couldn't stop, the rush of emotions propelling me forward, away from the ghosts of my past. At last, the truth from the past came to light. It turned out that my ex-boyfriend's family had endured a string of hardships. His grandmother battled dementia, his father's business collapsed, and his mother suffered from exhaustion due to caregiving responsibilities. Eventually, they had relocated to the countryside to seek refuge with relatives. While his grandmother had since passed away, things had gradually settled down for them. He expressed regret for not having the courage to confide in me about their family struggles earlier. "I understand now, but you should have told me," I responded, acknowledging the difficulty he had faced. Although it was in the past, learning the truth brought a sense of closure and understanding. But the surprises didn't end there. By a twist of fate, I discovered that my ex-boyfriend now worked at the same place as Emma, and they even shared the same shift today. "I'm Logan. I'm 19 years old and I'm studying to be a doctor. I'm from Texas, but now I live in New York City for college. My parents are in Dallas, where my dad works as a surgeon at a university hospital, and my mom stays home. After high school, I moved to New York and I've been on my own for about 4 months now, since July. My dad's work inspired me to study hard and get into medical school. But since coming here, I haven't had the typical college experience I hoped for. I've been focused on my studies, which is important, but I also wanted to hang out with friends and join clubs. Unfortunately, money has been tight, so I couldn't do those things. My parents pay my tuition, but I have to pay for everything else like rent and living expenses. To make ends meet, I've been doing different jobs like tutoring, working at events, and even at a bar. But it's been tough. I often have to switch between shifts at different jobs just to get by each month. Weekends are when I try to earn the most money. I never really had a day off. It was tough both mentally and physically. I get sleepy during class, and when I come home late at night, I'm too tired to study. I'm worried I might fail my classes and have to repeat the year if things keep going like this. Studying should be my top priority, but I'm struggling to focus. I felt anxious and desperate, so I called my mom for some financial help, even if it was just a little. My dad is hardly ever home because he's busy with his job, so my mom handles the finances. I thought they could help because my dad earns well, but my mom said they couldn't afford to send extra money. Many of my friends get financial help from their parents, and I wished I had that too. Despite all this, I kept working hard at my jobs. The midterms came, but I hadn't studied enough, and as I expected, I had to retake some exams. After finishing the retests in early August, my summer vacation began. I'm planning to work a lot during this long break to earn as much money as possible. Once summer is over, I'll focus more on my studies. That means cutting down on work hours, which should help my finances. To save money, I've been eating cheap foods like instant noodles, bread, and discounted meals. I also use my bike instead of paying for transportation. Growing up, I never had to worry about money, so this new life of financial struggle is unexpected and tough. Despite all this, I stay in touch with college friends through texts. Seeing their fun photos makes me realize how different our lives are, even though we go to the same university. My friends often invited me out, but I had to reluctantly decline because I didn't have the money or the time. "Let's go somewhere that doesn't cost anything," I suggested. One of our classmates messaged me, "Are you sure you're okay? You always seem tired at school, and I think you're working too much." My friend was concerned about me. "I've got the physical stamina, and I need to earn my living expenses. Let's meet up once school starts again," I replied. After that, I went to work at the bar as usual, but something happened shortly after. I collapsed during my shift. It was a busy Friday with lots of customers, and as I was carrying drinks, I suddenly felt dizzy. I don't remember much after that, but when I came to, I found myself in the hospital. According to the doctor, I collapsed due to exhaustion and malnutrition. I received treatment and was allowed to go home the same day. I immediately called my boss at the bar to apologize. My boss explained that after I collapsed, he had called my name, but I was too out of it to respond, so he called an ambulance. He had also contacted my parents. "You've been taking on a lot of shifts, and I relied too much on that. I'm sorry about that. I want you to rest easy for the rest of the month," my boss said. This meant a cut in my income. As I rode the subway home from the hospital, I wondered if I should take on more tutoring jobs. I found myself at a loss. I was supposed to work at the bar the next day, but that suddenly turned into a day off. I decided to quietly stay in bed today. While checking my phone, I noticed a message from my friend that I had missed while I was unconscious. I replied and explained why my response was delayed. Upon learning about my situation, my friend decided to come over. He bought groceries at the supermarket and made spaghetti for me. While eating the meal he had kindly prepared, our conversation turned to the topic of living expenses for someone living alone. When I mentioned that I wasn't receiving any financial support from home, my friend was surprised. "That's why you've been working so hard. Your dad's a doctor. You should be getting some support." "No," I explained. "I asked Mom, and she said they're barely managing with just my tuition." "But you're an only child, right? Maybe if you ask, they could send a little support," my friend suggested. My mom said even a small amount of support was out of the question. "No way, that doesn't make sense. I hate to say this, but maybe your dad is sick and can't work," my friend speculated. Thinking it over, I said, "My dad is a doctor and used to drive a luxury car. Our house is in an upscale neighborhood, and I went to private schools my whole life. So why would Mom suddenly say they have no money?" Suddenly worried, I immediately messaged my mom. "Are you both okay?" She replied after a while, "We're fine," but I couldn't relax, thinking maybe they were just saying that to keep me from worrying. Since I had planned to go home for the holidays, I decided to talk to my parents about this. After thanking my friend, he said, "I'll be waiting for some souvenirs." I felt grateful to have such a friend. The holiday season came and I took the cheapest flight I could find back home. I could only stay for a night and a day because of my job, but I was looking forward to it. When I arrived, my parents greeted me at the door. My dad seemed surprised when he saw me. "You've lost a lot of weight." "Really?" I hadn't noticed myself, but apparently I looked quite different. My mom was also taken aback and fell silent. For lunch, my mom had prepared things like salad, soup, and chicken wings, and for the first time in a long while, the three of us sat down to eat together. As soon as we sat down, my dad looked worried and asked, "You look thinner. Are you eating properly?" I told him the truth. "Not really. It's been a while since I had such a luxurious meal." "What do you usually eat?" "Cafeteria food," my dad asked. "Nah, the cafeteria is too expensive for me." "Is it that expensive?" "It's about $5 or so." My dad looked puzzled. "Is the money I've been sending enough for you?" Confused, I responded, "Huh? I haven't been getting any money." I finally told my dad. "What do you mean?" "So you mean to tell me you haven't received any money for the past 4 months?" he asked, shocked. "I haven't received any," I replied. Have you really been sending money? I had asked your mom to transfer $2,000 every month into your account, Dad said, surprised. Really? I was surprised. Mom told me that your finances were tight and that she couldn't afford to send any money. I explained. Dad looked perplexed. We have enough money. Paisley, have you been sending money to Logan properly? He asked Mom. Mom looked down silently. I was worried that maybe Dad got sick or something and couldn't work, and that's why the money wasn't coming. No, I've been working as usual, Dad assured. Really? That's a relief, I said, somewhat relieved. But then why hadn't any money been sent to me? I was baffled. Cassie, what's going on? Dad pressed Mom. Still refusing to meet our eyes, Mom remained silent. Come on, don't stay silent. Can you explain? Dad insisted. When Dad pressed her, Mom finally said quietly, I haven't sent any money. What? I haven't sent any money to Logan, she admitted. Hearing this, both my dad and I were stunned. What? Why not? Dad asked, incredulous. There are just so many expenses, Mom replied. What kind of expenses? Isn't our home mortgage already paid off? Dad questioned. Realizing she could no longer hide the truth, Mom dropped a bombshell. I've been keeping the money for myself, she confessed. I was dumbstruck. I read online that medical students can earn more than regular students with tutoring jobs, so I thought you'd be okay. I asked you to send me even just a small amount of money, but honestly, I didn't realize you were that strapped for cash, Mom explained. My mom continued in a matter-of-fact tone. There was a call from Logan's workplace recently saying you collapsed from overwork. I was also shocked to see how thin you've become. What? Logan collapsed. What happened? It seemed my dad hadn't been informed about the recent events, so I explained. You collapsed from overwork and malnutrition. Yeah, but it wasn't anything serious, I added. Paisley, why didn't you tell me? My dad asked, clearly upset. I'm sorry. I was afraid he'd find out I wasn't sending the money, my mom said without any sign of guilt. This is outrageous. Logan had to work until he collapsed because he didn't have any money, Dad exclaimed. I didn't mean any harm, my mom defended herself. What have you been using all the money for? Dad confronted her. After a brief pause, she finally spoke up. Well, actually, I have some debts. What? Those were unimaginable words coming from her, who always seemed to perfectly manage the household and even took care of the garden flowers. I thought. The money was used to pay off my debts, Mom continued. Debt? How much do you owe? Dad asked, clearly in disbelief. Mom, still looking down, said quietly, about $100,000. $100,000. I was shocked by the amount. My dad sighed deeply. Why do you have so much debt? I got into gambling, Mom confessed. Basically, I had gotten myself into gambling debts without our knowledge. Why would you even start something like that? Dad asked, holding his head in his hands. About 2 years ago, I started gambling just to kill time. I won some money and it felt really good at first. I'd only used small amounts, but going to the casino became a habit, and I started betting more and more. I couldn't stop, and it led to that amount. I had never gambled, so I couldn't understand why she couldn't stop. Yes, I kept trying to win back what I lost, but I ended up losing more often than winning. I even dipped into our savings, she admitted. So you've spent more than just the debt amount? Dad yelled at her. How much of our savings did you use? He demanded. About $30,000, Mom confessed. I stopped withdrawing more because I thought you would find out. She looked like she was about to cry. If you'd talked to me about it earlier, it might have been better. With that amount, you could have worked part-time and paid it back little by little, right? Dad said. I absolutely don't want to work part-time, she said emphatically. Get a grip. You racked up the debt yourself. He was visibly angry. I've been a stay-at-home mom for so long. There's no way I can work now. That's why I borrowed money from payday lenders, she confessed. I was stunned by her selfish reasoning. Then the interest piled up and the debt just grew. I got involved with various lenders, and now I can't make payments anywhere. I'm completely overwhelmed. Dad sighed again. Are you still gambling in this situation? Yes, I see no choice, Mom admitted. Then I'll pay off the debt for you, Dad said decisively. Really? Mom stood up from her chair, her face brightening with joy. I knew you would help me. She rushed towards him, looking moved. However, things didn't turn out as favorably for her. But this is your severance. Let's get a divorce, Dad said abruptly. What? I was surprised. Divorce? I will never agree to a divorce, Mom said firmly. Her face turned from joy to terror, as if she had been cast down from heaven to hell. You continued gambling even knowing Logan was struggling, right? You kept borrowing money, endangering the family, Dad pointed out. That's true, but I can't continue as a family with a wife who prioritizes gambling over her son, he insisted. No way, she finally burst into tears. I'll never gamble again. Please forgive me, she pleaded. But he seemed resolute. Your gambling is likely an addiction. You'll need to see a psychiatrist and undergo long-term treatment. It's not uncommon for people to relapse into gambling during treatment. I'm not addicted. I can stop anytime, she protested. No, if this continues, we could all end up destitute. I have to separate, not just for my sake, but to stop burdening Logan any further. I'll stop from tomorrow, she insisted, but she did not seem to grasp the severity of her inability to stop gambling. I was deeply anxious about the amount of debt and my mom's pathological gambling behavior. In exchange for paying your severance, there will be no division of assets, my dad stated. What? I can't agree to those terms. If you don't pay back the debt, they might seize your account. She fell silent. I never imagined coming home after a long time would lead to this situation. I was just unsettled by my parents fighting. No, Dad, don't you think we can hold off on deciding about divorce? Maybe take some time to cool off and think it over, I suggested. I'm sorry, Logan, but that's not possible, he said calmly. I thought he might have decided on divorce in a fit of despair, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Lunch ended in a heavy atmosphere, and I went to my room. I lay down on the sofa, but I could still hear my parents arguing. It wasn't much of an argument. My mom was hysterically screaming, and my dad responded firmly. I got so fed up with college and home that I just went to sleep out of frustration. The next morning, my mom looked awful, probably from crying all night. I had planned to stay at home a bit longer, but the oppressive atmosphere made me decide to leave early. My dad drove me to the airport. Logan, I'm sorry for all the trouble I've caused, he apologized to me. No, it's not your fault, Dad. I'm grateful for the chance to attend medical school, I reassured him. I'll start transferring an allowance directly to your account from now on, so don't worry, he said. Yeah, thanks, Dad. It really helps, I replied. I know things are tough, but take care, he said as he dropped me off. I flew back to New York. The rest of the summer vacation was busy with work, passing by in a flash. Still, I was constantly worried about my parents. A few months later, I heard that my mom finally agreed to the divorce. My dad's steadfastness broke her resistance. As previously discussed, my dad took on her debts, and in return, there was no asset division in their divorce agreement. I have mixed feelings about my parents getting divorced, but it's not all bad news. Now that I'm receiving an allowance from my dad, I've been able to cut back on work and focus more on my studies. I might even get to hang out with friends. I heard from my grandmother on my mother's side that despite the divorce over her gambling, my mom was back at the slot machines every day. She quickly racked up more debt. Her family couldn't afford to cover her debts, so my mom reluctantly started working part-time. She's currently attending therapy to